All right, we are live. At least YouTube says it. Just waiting for the video to confirm.
Hello, YouTubes.
Hello, hey, there we are. All right. Welcome. Surprise!
Ah,
Ah!
we got you out of bed early.
Ooh,
Do you know the last time I had to set an alarm before 7 a.m. was? I'm self-employed, you son of a... Welcome to Talking Heads, everyone. Episode 337.5. Your once weekly and this week twice weekly live show for the latest in beer and tech news. I'm Jeff, and I'm in a different position on my screen today because we've got... Hold on, I need to point this direction. We've got a couple special guest hosts. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
sure. So I'm George, better known as Cheese from Chips&Cheese. And
I'm Jordan. I'm from StorageReview. I do the AI and advanced workloads over there.
So, the reason we're doing this at such an odd time is these guys are staying up super late, not because they're on the East Coast right now, but because they're in Taipei. They are live from Computex. We've been talking for like a week or so about maybe doing like a Computex live show recap kind of thing. We thought we had a time worked out, but then had some time zone confusion in which
Time
one of
zones
us
are
meant
hard.
tomorrow and the other one went tomorrow. And so they pinged me at 7 p.m. last night and said, "Hey, are you ready to go?" And I'm like, "No." So we pushed back 12 hours.
Line is it really screws with me too.
Yeah, he pinged me at 7 a.m. yesterday morning and said, "Hey, do you want to do a show tomorrow at 7?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds great. 36 hours from now is wonderful."
Well, see, there's two of us. You should have known it was our tomorrow.
Anyway, we're all here. If you've never seen the show before, we talk tech, we talk beer, we talk games, pop culture, entertainment. Today is going to be kind of a Computex recap, going over obviously the big three in a little bit more detail than we covered on Wednesday, perhaps, but also doing some like best of showcase, worst of showcase, industry direction, getting a little bit more deep dive into Computex. All super chats are read on the air so long as they will not permanently demonetize the channel. Normally, I drink alcohol on the show. It is 7 o'clock and even I have limits. Although they have said they will fill that role for me. So, but if you're drinking along with us, alcoholic or not, I know the Australians and the British are probably pretty happy to finally get in on the party here. Let us know what you're drinking in chat, and we'll see about giving some early show shoutouts as we go along. Last but not least, links to all of us are down in the video description if you don't normally follow us. But the only way I make money on this show is through Patreon. So link is down in the video description, and it gets you exclusive access to my Discord server, where you can chat with myself, John, Brett, Steve, and even these two nuts are on my Discord server. And join the conversation that is awesome and awesome community all through the week. Anyway, welcome you two. Hello.
Here.
Yeah.
hello.
Or back, I guess, at this point, right? We did
Yeah.
one, what, about 6-8 months ago?
Yeah, technically back in December, we did a live show with Adam Patrick Murray from PC World, and these two kept stealing the microphone in the background. So they have been on Talking Heads before. We've already got their best Trek takes, so we've already had that established, and how I agree with one of them, the other can go jump off a bridge. And, beyond that,
We're getting into it today. All right.
yeah, let's get into it. So I'm drinking some coffee. I've got my French press going. I literally just pressed it down, so I'm ready to go.
Well, so you can get some of the usual suspects that you find, in North America, stateside, that sort of stuff here. But we decided to try some of the local stuff. And so we found a beer that apparently is really good for the bar. It's a bar beer.
Bar beer.
So we're starting with that. And yeah, we'll let you know what comes after this.
All right. Bar beer. I don't know if you guys get it where you are at, but 10 Barrel Brewing out of Bend, Oregon has a beer that's just called pub beer.
Yes, we
yeah.
have that. up in my
Yes.
neck of the woods.
It's super inexpensive. It's just, it's what an American lager should be. It's what Budweiser and Miller and Coors, it's what those beers should be. It's actually a decent beer for a really cheap price. I can usually get it for less than $1 a can if I buy like a 24 pack.
Oh wow, that's a good deal.
But it comes in a can almost exactly like that.
Yeah.
It is a plain white can and it says pub beer.
Yep.
Anyway, very excited to have you guys on the show. So I think let's go ahead and we'll just get started. As I finish pouring my coffee here. I think we'll start with maybe a little controversial news.
Oh, spicy.
Ooh,
Yeah,
we're
we'll-
getting it there.
We'll start spicy. I mean, that's the first thing that I've got up here on my notes anyway. And we'll start with Ian Cuttress's take on this because I think all of us were kind of in agreement as well.
Mm-hmm.
He could have and probably should have said no. And that is Jensen Huang. Oh, of course, I always forget to do this now. Linux being what it is, always forgets to save my window capture. Window, where's OBS? There it is, or Firefox, there it is. All right. So Jensen Huang, CEO of basically the richest company in the world at this point, signing the chest of some woman who asked, and apparently you were privy to this, Jordan.
I was just if you look behind Jensen's head, I was in that booth back over there, kind of just doing some general filming, because I learned that if you follow the tech CEOs around, but you stay a booth behind, the booths are empty. So you can get loads of pictures and video with lots of people, with not a lot of people in them.
Yeah.
So I was taking that strategy and I had kind of seen the whole commotion and the whole thing unfold. Now I wasn't right up in there, but when I saw the pictures come out of it, I was just like,
that's what happened. Right.
Yeah. It's so hot take.
Yeah.
Would he have said no? Yes. Technically, it was on an article of clothing. Probably not in the most appropriate spot. Would I want
Right.
my child doing that? No.
Would I want?
Not a good look. It's not a good
look. It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Look, I have daughters. Would I want my daughter working at a company where this is potentially the culture of what's up top? There are so many optics and so many different takes and directions you can take with this. Look, an attractive woman asked you to sign her chest. Of course, I'm happy to do that. I think I mentioned on our private chat. I live my life by a very strict moral code.
Yep.
If it would make my wife bitch slap me, it's probably a bad idea.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my feeling on it.
And I'm not even the CEO of a $3 trillion company.
You're not? Shocked.
I'm not, right? No.
Computing's not pulling in that kind of dough these days.
I'll let you know when we finally get listed on the NASDAQ 50,000.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. But nothing good comes of this.
No, that's the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no win scenario on that. Did you see some of the memes of people zooming into the guy in the background making the cringe face?
Yeah.
On that, yeah, that's
kind of how I feel. It's just like,
yeah.
That
There's this dude front and center.
yeah,
he sums the whole thing up.
Right. Exactly. Someone said, Gabriel says, if it was a guy there, it wouldn't be any question about this. It's a shirt. The problem is it's not a guy.
And it's in an area of the shirt. If it was the sleeve, maybe.
If she goes, can you sign my shirt? This is no problem.
Yeah.
This is no problem.
Right. It's the optics. And
exactly.
Again, I don't think that we should take it away as maybe like the defining moment of all of the things that NVIDIA did or didn't do at Computex.
But it does kind
But
of help sum them up, doesn't it?
it does
Yeah.
really put a pin on some of that. Moments earlier, I had seen him at another booth speaking. There was a large was that Palit's booth that had the large fans, the
Palit,
oversized
Yep.
GPU, and he was making some very funny jokes about RTX 5090s and 10,000 FPS at 69K, and it was a show. It was the Jensen show.
Yeah. Odd decision, odd bit of optics. I'm surprised there's not more outrage over this. And in fact, the reason I brought up Ian's post, I'm not logged in right now, so you can't see the replies, but the replies were basically calling Ian an idiot, and what alpha male wouldn't
That was,
acquiesce a request of a beautiful young woman to sign her boob and things like that. It's like, there's more to it than that.
No.
Yeah.
Leave it. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Let's skip that one.
Yeah. So, frustrating, irritating, not good, no matter how you look at it. Company notwithstanding, like, this dude's married. Like, come on, make better decisions.
Yeah.
Don't go Elon Musk.
Now, if you had to hear the elevator music that we've had to hear for the past week or so, that could drive you insane enough to do something like that.
Tell me about the elevator music. Yeah, no, I've heard. You're not the first person to mention this, so
Yeah, it's about a 15-second long clip, and I've heard the tune somewhere before, maybe some like royalty-free YouTube music that gets put over generic crappy, scrolling TikTok things. And it's only 15 seconds long. The problem is the elevator ride's about 40 seconds long, so you get to hear the same crap 2.5 times.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody who's been to Computex for years and has been at this hotel every single time. They haven't changed that music in over a decade.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing over and over and over.
I'm getting some flashbacks with Cisco hold music now.
Oh God, you poor soul.
Cisco, HP. I know all the classics.
The good ones.
Yeah. So yeah, no, Taipei 101, apparently avoid the elevator music. Like you'll wish to take the stairs is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, down here at the hotel for sure.
I think the Taipei 101 elevator was faster to go from like the 5th floor to the 89th floor than it is for this hotel's elevator to go from the 7th floor to the 16th floor.
Yeah, that elevator, if you guys in the audience haven't looked into that and you're into the engineering and stuff, that Taipei 101 elevator is quite a marvelous piece of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's up there with the Space Needle elevator and whatnot. Like the acceleration is smooth and you get where you're gonna go.
Yeah, and you kind of it leaves you being like, man, I wish that was longer, but holy crap, that was really fast. I just went up 700 meters like that.
Yeah.
It's quite an experience. It was well worth the trip over there that we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for, not to circle this back, but I'm just waiting for the meme shirts now where people start like wearing signatures from Jensen on pre-printed shirts.
I have enough photos of his signatures on different NVIDIA DGX servers and stuff. I wonder if we could start make a craft computing store Jensen signature.
What we do is have Jensen and just like a couple of like upside down parentheses or something like that right below it.
Yep. The ASCII art.
Yeah, just the ASCII art,
Yeah.
Maybe do Kilroy poking out from the top. Go old school with it.
I wonder how that would probably do okay after this.
There's something there. I think we should explore that more. Anyway, So the odd and whimsical news aside, we touched on a lot of the different launches in Wednesday's show. We went over, but kind of broad strokes. We went over. I think the big one from Intel is probably Sierra Forest, but Lions Cove definitely has some stuff to talk about as well. We did touch on Zen 5. I touched a little bit on the community reaction of, oh, it's the same core counts. Oh, it's the same thing, just a little bit faster. What is this, Intel again? And I did kind of push back on some of the reactions that I've seen. I don't know if you guys have been privy to that over there, but they went, oh, look, if you have the 7600X, then here's the 9600X, and it's the same 6 cores and 12 threads, but it's Zen 5 now. And there is some of that. There is some NPU stuff that I think was worth talking about within Zen 5 as well. Plus, let's not shake a stick at 16% IPC. Like, we've kind of gotten complacent.
But Jeff, it's a ground-up design. It should be better, Jeff.
We've gotten complacent with, it's just another 15%. No, this isn't Intel. This isn't just another 4%. Do you guys remember those days?
I remember it just being Skylake V5 or whatever.
Again and again and again. Right. No, so is it the most exciting launch? No. No, we're still on, the 9950X. We're still on 16 core. We're probably going to get X3D models here in 3 to 6 months. There was talk of Zen 5C coming to desktop, and up to 32 core. And I think that may still eventually happen, but I don't think that was going to be a launch thing because Zen 5C is a less performant efficiency chip. And, it's going to be a special needs thing, not an enthusiast thing. And this was about the enthusiast market.
Let me throw this out there real quick. So it's about the enthusiast market. You're right. And that's where a lot of the comments are coming from with the 16% and stuff like that. If I was a betting man, and I have a hunch that there may have been a little bit of an undersale on that Zen 5 in certain workloads, in certain instruction sets. So I'll put my money there.
I kind of got that same feeling, if I'm being honest.
So looking at the tests that they ran and looking at what they've disclosed, I think I have to agree with George on this. I think that there is a little bit of a slight bit of underselling. Now, how much there is, I don't know. But if you go up one or two slides, yes,
2x instruction bandwidth,
yeah. So that's the first instruction fetch bandwidth fetch increase in 2 decades for AMD.
Yeah.
So they've been at 32 bytes per cycle instruction fetch since K8, if I remember correctly. At least since K10, which is Phenom. K8 is the original Athlon 64, and K10 was Phenom.
Yep.
This will be the first time in that long since they've increased their instruction bandwidth. And from the tests that we've seen, and looking at those tests, those don't strike me as instruction-heavy benchmarks.
No.
Which is interesting. Now, the one that is more instruction-heavy, based on my memory, we were doing some profiling, was actually League of Legends.
League of Legends, yeah.
Was actually fairly instruction-heavy. Despite it being a fairly old game. And then you can also see Blender, while not instruction heavy, does like very wide FPU units.
Yeah.
And does like a lot of L1 and L2 bandwidth, which was also increased.
Yep.
So I have to agree with Jordan on this. I think there's a bit of undersell here.
Yeah, definitely an interesting launch. And the thing that a lot of people I think are stretching a bit with, or maybe not understanding is, um, at the end of the day, AMD is still in this market to make money,
Mhm.
and they definitely have parts and processes and things that they could throw into this segment to decimate Intel right now. Like if they wanted to bring out like a 4-chiplet AM5, I think that's in the cards.
Well,
If they wanted to bring out Zen 5C right now, that's in the cards. Um, go ahead.
the issue, I think, with those ideas, this is why I don't think that Zen 5C will ever come to desktop. The CCD is just physically too large.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't think it could physically actually fit on an AM5 socket without a lot of trickery, pokery, and switching up how the PCB is and the where the wires are and the substrate, which I just don't see them doing.
Mhm.
Maybe with later sockets you could see that, but not with AM5.
Yeah. Um, but it's not like Intel is knocking at the door of AMD with identical competing products. That Intel has gone a completely different direction with focusing more on, let's pack more efficiency cores in there. Let's get a 24 core 32 threaded desktop chip in which you have 16 efficiency cores. That's not really where AMD is at. And sure, thread for thread, they're both 32 thread chips, and there is some benefit of having 24 physical cores. When it comes to the enthusiast space, when it comes to gaming, when it comes to productivity, 16 high performance, hyper threaded cores are better than whatever you want to throw at it for efficiency cores.
That's a trap I see a lot of people, at least in my server, get caught in too when they start comparing spec sheets or looking at stuff. And it's 8 really, really good cores is going to do 99.99% of what you want to do. And that 0.1 is that big Cinebench score when you first build it.
Mhm.
Is that worth the extra hundreds of dollars that on the board, on the power supply, on the CPU, on the cooler that you're going to end up spending?
Yep.
Or, I mean, I'm driving, you're on a Core Ultra laptop right now, and I'm driving that daily, and it's fine for light gaming when I'm traveling,
Mhm.
just the kind of RTS stuff that I like to play around with. It's fine when it's docked. It'll drive an ultra wide monitor at 1440p. Everything's fine. There's no, oh man, this thing's so slow.
Right.
And I think something that people have either have missed or have sort of not completely looked at yet is that they've dropped TDPs on the 6 and 8 cores and on
Yeah.
the 12 core.
Yeah.
They went from on the 12 core from 170 TDP to 120, and then on the 8 and 6 cores they went from 105 to 65.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
lining back up with where they were at with Zen 2. Zen 3,
yeah.
Zen 4, they went from 65 to, I think it was 90 and then 105 on the 6 and 8 core models. And dropping back down to 65, plus a 16% IPC, plus higher boost clocks. That was the other thing on the 6 core model. They went from, what was that, a 4.9 to a 5.4 boost or something like that. They're getting higher frequencies out of these smaller chips using less power, but also with an instructions per clock boost.
hmm
That's a pretty big deal.
Now, if you don't mind, sort of moving on to the mobile side of things, right? Strix Point also
Sure.
was announced. And you touched on something. You said there's something there on the NPU side,
Yeah.
right? Um, Now this might be heresy and sacrilege right now in
Uh-oh.
today's world of AI, AI, AI.
Chips and cheese
Um,
coming in with a hot take. Here we go.
Let's do this.
the NPUs on at least so far all of the systems. I don't care who you're talking about really.
Mhm.
AMD, Intel, I haven't really experienced Qualcomm, so I can't say definitively, but I
Mhm.
assume it's similar there. They're all a pain to program.
Oh yeah.
They're much harder to program than the GPU. So
Mhm.
take Strix Point, for example. The GPU does not technically have as many tops as the
Mhm.
NPU.
Hmm.
But I bet you that it will be far easier for you to program your program to get 90% of the GPU tops than to even get 40% of the NPU tops.
Yeah.
And it that's what the big tops number just doesn't reflect is how easy is it to get those tops.
Yeah.
They're selling it on the same thing why they sold like the laptop like this one, like this Core Ultra of, oh, you need this because AI is coming, but it's moving faster than they can bring the chips out.
Hmm.
And now the AI PC that you bought 2 months ago can't run the features that were promised that they'll be able to run when they come out. So that's,
I
yeah,
asked
great point.
Tim on the show on Wednesday, because the talk has been, and you two I think are the perfect people to ask this question. AI is coming.
Mhm.
What exactly is AI going to do for me locally on my machine in my workflow on a daily basis?
Okay, hot take again. You ready? Buckle up. This is going to be a good one.
Like I said, you two are the perfect people to ask this question and to kind of.
Copilot Plus.
Mhm.
It's going to watch everything you do and it's going to record it and it's going to have screenshots and it's going to have contextual awareness and it's all going to run local.
Mhm.
If we set aside for 1 second the security argument of that entire thing, because I'm well aware of it, I know how it all works. It's definitely a security thing. We
Yeah.
set that aside. It's really stinking cool. What did Jeff and I talk about first in our meeting when we talked the other day? Oh yeah, that's right. It was about Boobgate. Like that instant recall, that instant note taking, that sort of stuff, and the idea and the feeling that it is going to stay here, right? Because that's the biggest fear, right? Is I don't
Mhm.
want to give my data to OpenAI or Microsoft to go use and take and do whatever they're going to do with it. It's
Right.
my data, right? The data we all know nowadays, data is the most valuable thing. I don't want to just give it away for free.
Right.
That's the cool part. Would I necessarily run Copilot Plus on my personal computer that I use for my taxes, um, my business accounting, in all that? Probably not.
Yeah.
There's some spicy jokes that I can make around that I will not get you demonetized for. Um, but for my work PC, 1000% I will run that. So quick pause break for the next round. So we're gonna
Yes.
heresy. So we've got some Austrian wine.
Ooh.
Courtesy of our friends over at Noctua. They had an extra one in the booth at the end of the day, and
Nice.
they passed the bottle along. It's actually pretty good stuff.
Well, Jacob, on behalf of Chips and Cheese and Storage Review, thank you.
Yes, thank you very
That's
much, Jacob.
awesome.
Your hospitality was phenomenal today, sir.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Isn't Jacob the best?
Oh my God, I love that guy.
First time
His whole
meeting him.
team.
It,
His
it
whole
was
team.
great. It was great.
Everybody on that team is fantastic. The
Yes.
engineering nerd overload that I got when I was in that booth, I was with there was another kind of media overclocker guy that was there with me that we were talking at the same time to Jacob.
Mhm.
And I looked at him and I said, "Isn't this the most noctua shit you've ever seen in your life?" Because the level of engineering, if you guys haven't seen the video from Steve on that yet, it's definitely worth a watch because it's mostly Jacob in that video.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of that man when you meet him. He's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. 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 No. Getting an engineer talking about the specificity of the minutia of details that you would never ever consider.
Mhm.
And Steve's video was fantastic with Jacob. I don't know if you guys got to see Linus's deep dive into Noctua's thing as well. Linus actually covered very well some of the why is it taken so long for them to come out with the NHD15 successor? Why has it taken so long to do this and this? And he goes, well, we're talking about components that degrade over 10 years. And so you have to simulate 10 years of degradation to see, will the performance still stack up when this is still running? And how do you simulate plastic deformation and heat cycling and whatnot over the lifetime of a fan like this, and then compensate for those in, when you're trying to get the airfoil just right and have those blades as close to the frame but not touching the frame as possible to minimize noise and increase throughput and everything, and then simulate 10 years of it doing that, to improve your product to the nth degree. And then you hear Jacob just nerd out about that shit.
It's amazing. It's
It really
amazing.
is.
So actually, continue on that. There was a very interesting image/data that they were showing about how over time, due to the power cycling and the heat, as well as just due to the pressure from the ILM and the socket, the deformation in LGA 1700 sockets, and how over time there will be less contact.
Yeah.
I have an image of that I can shoot over to you right now.
Oh, yeah.
What interested me was, and I was asking Jacob about this, because sort of on the other side, they were showing the AMD, the AM5 socket, and the AM5 socket had much less deformation, and that was because the thicker heatsink and the reduced pressure that AMD uses in their socket.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see sort of the
thicker IHS, correct?
Yeah, thicker
Okay.
IHS. Thank you. Yeah. But also because AMD is a square instead of a rectangle, so it's easier to sort of.
It's a square instead of a rectangle, so there is less. Oh yeah. No, I have that image. So let me grab that real quick.
The context, I think, is important for everybody to see, like the level of.
That's not the right. That's
the one you just sent.
That's a later picture.
You sent me the raw image of that.
Speaking of sockets, that's what I just sent you just now?
That's what you sent me just now.
What the hey?
I think. Oh no, hold on. You sent me a raw image.
Oh yes, it is a DNG.
Okay.
Shooting raw kids.
God dang it, you're gonna make me do things.
Oh no.
There we go. Well, I have to open it with. There we go. You're screwing my. Okay, there we go.
It's in. Check out the Gamers Nexus video. It's in there for sure. Speaking of sockets,
Speaking of sockets, this is an interesting socket.
That's certainly a socket.
That's certainly a socket.
Yeah. LGA 1851. It's the Aerolink socket.
Yes.
So these were given to me, or I received these, I should say, the other day. They were brought into my possession. And apparently I didn't realize it at the time until I went back and saw a thumbnail from Steve this week about Intel's supposed secrecy and or NDAE and or all of the things that I'm not subject to being on the data center side, which may be how I came into contact with these photos. What gives with that? Why are they doing that?
I don't know. I don't know. I would love Ian in his next sit down with Pat to just directly ask the question.
Yeah.
Because Pat, as an engineer, again, like, old, late 70s, early 80s, Intel born and bred engineer, he might answer off the cuff of the honest marketing reason of why Intel is switching from 1700 to 1851. I don't think it's going to be a good reason. And I don't know if you guys have kept up with a lot of the older Intel news, but for years it's been known that they changed pads for the sake of changing pads, and you can actually get Kapton tape screens for older CPUs, so like Coffee Lake chips, to mount into newer boards, and the newer boards will still boot them as long as your pads are arranged properly. And so
Really?
people have made like flexible and micro layer PCBs to change the circuitry pathing and have a an X270 board boot an X370 processor, or Z270, Z370, and vice versa. And so the sockets never really changed. It was 1155, 1150, 1151. And so, yeah, there's a couple extra or a couple fewer pins. But if you map the pins to the right locations, and then you tell the BIOS, hey, this is just this chip, it'll boot up and it'll run and it'll start.
Signal's a signal.
A signal is a signal.
I
As I
remember
like to
this
say, 5 volts is 5 volts, right?
I remember this dating back to like the LGA 771 and 775 sockets.
Yeah.
Back when you would basically Teflon tape some of those pins to get them to boot.
Yep. Yeah. No, if you block 4 pins on a 771, then it'll boot in a 775 board.
Amazing.
Yeah, the IHS was applied 90 degrees off, and so your CPU looks like it's sideways, but it's the same damn socket.
Yeah.
Oh, Intel.
Yeah. And so they've been doing this literally for 15 years, of changing a socket just for the sake of changing a socket, for the sake of arbitrarily putting in a roadblock where there really doesn't need to be one.
What I don't get this time is that they've never been super secretive about it. This time they're being a lot more cagey.
Look back to the Zen 5 announcement, and there's something in AM5's marketing, or in AMD's marketing specifically. We will be supporting AM5 through 2027. Yeah. And by the way, we're also dropping a couple new AM4 chips today. Just as a
just when I thought we were done.
Granted, those are essentially refreshes of pre-existing chips.
I don't care. They're still newer than what you could buy today.
Right?
And that socket has been on the market for 7+ years at this point. And they're still 2017, March 2017 is Zen 1 launch.
Wasn't it before that?
AM4? No.
I'm pretty sure that AM4 was first had excavator chips on it.
It would have been a little earlier than 20. Possibly, yeah. I think Jeff's a little. Well, 2017 is when my board. So I know this because I just upgraded one of my AM4 platforms for my kid.
No, because there was FM1, FM2.
Yeah. That system would have built.
There was also AM1, AM2, AM2 Plus. AM4 was the Zen launch, and a big differentiator in that is DDR4 support from the AM2.
It launched, according to Wikipedia, it launched in September 2016.
Wikipedia is never wrong.
True, but yes, it did launch with excavator chips first. Excavator APUs. It's looking like it launched first with.
Interesting. That's all.
Someone in the chat can probably check me on that, but.
Oh
no, we're good. Momentary free. Your audio never cut out. So.
Okay.
Cool.
As long as you can still hear me, I think we're good. And your video's already.
We got you. I think we're back.
Yep.
For
storage, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just gonna go official launch. I'm gonna go.
But they're saying support. I think until 2025 plus. That's. Yeah. Almost a decade of support, which is insane for a single socket.
Right.
I mean, okay, so that's a track record now, right? Like, let's take that into consideration for anybody building today, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me in 9 years I can upgrade my CPU to darn near the latest and greatest in the same board? When with a BIOS update it'll work? I mean, I just did it with an MSI board. I went from a 1700X to the 5800X.
If you have an X370 motherboard, it may not be 100% officially supported. Some vendors are putting out BIOS updates for X370 still, though. There's no reason you can't run a 5950X. There's no reason you can't run, a 16 core Zen 3 CPU.
Yeah. I just did the review on the last one that launched a couple months back, and it was a fantastic upgrade. The experience was very easy.
Right.
Update the BIOS, remove the chip, swap it.
Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. And whereas before, in like the last 10 years, Intel has come out and gone, every 2 generations, they're going to come out with a new CPU socket and go, oh, it's because we're adding this feature, or we're giving you more bandwidth, or we're doing this. And that all turned out to be complete BS. And as soon as like the pad circuitry was known, they're like, no, you just move the power pins from here to here. Like, that's not an upgrade. Oh, we needed more power. Well, you added 2 pins. I don't think those 2 pins are going to carry enough current to change. And so the community figured it out right away.
They do that on the data center side too. Every 2 generations, one in Xeon Scalable 1 and 2, that was one socket. Yep. 3 and wait, is that right? No, yeah. 4 and 5 are on one socket.
Yeah.
Sandy and Ivy to Haswell and Broadwell.
And I'm pretty sure that Xeon 6, the SP, it's a new socket, but I think the physical socket
it's identical between Sierra Forest and Granite Rapids.
Yeah.
So as long as your board can support it with the power and your cooling solution can support it, you're good.
Now, I am going to play a bit of devil's advocate here and say, trying to have an X370 board or even like a B350 board run it at 5950 is going to be a struggle.
Oh, totally. There are some power considerations to take into account.
There are some sort of reasons why you could argue, hey, platform refreshes aren't necessarily a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I absolutely do understand sort of I want 5-6 years out of this thing that I just bought. Like I absolutely understand that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and AMD is doing the same thing on the data center side. Genoa, Bergamo, and now Turin, all same socket.
Yep.
So for the smaller shops that can afford the time and the effort to go and do their server upgrades, that's kind of a compelling reason, especially with core licensing and stuff like that in VMware going the way of the dodo, it looks like. Mm-hmm. Not the official stance, but with what Broadcom is broadcoming to VMware, poor little VMware.
Yeah.
And with core licensing, possibly not being as massive a consideration. That's why the AMD is still refreshing Zen 3.
They're still refreshing Zen 3.
Because those 32 core chips were selling like hotcakes. Yeah. And a lot of people ended up not actually taking like the 96 core Genoas just because of core licensing.
Yeah.
If you talk to any of the big tier 1 guys, they'll tell you like the most popular SKU that we have is the 32 core.
Yeah, it's the 7371 or something like that, the Milan 32.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 7341. Yeah, something like that.
It's any 32 core, Intel or AMD for that matter, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But yeah, there's a reason, and AMD's still refreshing it and still supporting it in the sockets, and they've got a track record for it. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm personally recommending right now, everybody, if my friends are making a build and they ask me what should I get, and I tell them just get an AMD board, man.
Mm-hmm.
So actually sort of going back to Strick's point, something that was interesting to me, and I don't know if this was necessarily in the slides, but this was said by AMD, that they're seeing a roughly 30% iGPU performance bump with Strick's point.
Ooh.
And that's with no extra memory bandwidth.
Correct.
So how the heck are they doing that?
I will tell you how they're doing that. The HX370, if you look right here, 16 compute unit. They added 30% more compute.
But that won't. So Phoenix, I can tell you for a fact, I have a Phoenix chip.
Uh-huh.
Is heavily, heavily memory bound in
Oh,
iGPU
absolutely.
workloads.
Yeah.
So adding more compute units shouldn't improve memory bound workloads. So I'm wondering how they're doing it.
Yes and no. I've done a lot of testing specifically around it mostly on the NVIDIA side, but kind of showing where even memory bound workloads on a GPU can be affected by the number of CUDA cores that you have within the same generation. And so I've done testing on like identical TDP parts with 1200 CUDA cores versus 2500 CUDA cores on the same board with the same memory bandwidth, and the 2500 is faster, uh, even in memory bound limitations.
You would,
And
to some degree, you would expect that because there's more caches there,
right,
but the iGPUs are so memory constrained
Mhm.
that I'm really looking forward to getting a chip just to see what they've done, right? I can't wait for like because now it's RDNA 3.5, whatever that 0.5 means.
yeah.
I assume we'll eventually find out, but I'm really looking forward to looking at exactly what they've changed there.
Yeah,
Um,
no, so sticking with kind of that compute core or the uh AMD 890M, I think is what this is officially going to be known as. That iGPU is going to be known
mhm.
as. Uh, this is one of the biggest things for handheld gamers that's going to be coming out this year. And I spoke to AMD specifically about this back in December. And I said, why in the world are we sticking with 12 compute unit of RDNA 3 in your modern chips? You know this market is out there, and you know they're asking for more performance, and you can't exactly drop a discrete GPU in an economical sense into one of these, or even a power foothold, and have it make sense in this form factor. But why are you throwing 8 cores of Zen 4 into a CPU that's intended for a gaming handheld and then giving us 12 compute unit? Give me a 4-core 8-threaded chip with 20. Give me a 4-core 8-threaded chip or a 6-core 12-threaded chip with 28 compute unit.
So I actually have to say, I had Asus sent us the ROG Ally with the Phoenix 2 chip. So that's 2 Zen 2 cores, 4 Zen 4C cores.
Yeah.
And honestly, in the games, now that only has 4 WGPs, 2 WGPs or 4 CUs.
Yeah.
But honestly, I personally would take that as like a handheld gaming chip over the bigger core counts.
Yeah.
So
The bigger
I
core
absolutely
counts
could see
the
like
bigger core counts do absolutely nothing for gaming performance, especially at 720 to 1080p low settings. You need graphics.
like if you took that core complex and just stuck it with the 890M,
Yeah.
I think that would be a very compelling chip.
And you can
So-
fit within your thermal footprint of that 15 to 25 watt TDP. And like I said, even if you went with, let's go crazy and let's put a 20 or a 24 or a 28 compute unit RDNA 3 die onto the same package. That is a much more compelling offering for a gamer than 8 cores of Zen 4, which is never going to be fully utilized.
Yeah.
I saw a comment that caught my eye about doing DIMMs that are GDDR DIMMs, and it tickled a little part of my brain from the data center world. Intel has done a CPU called the Data Center Max. No, Intel Xeon Max. Data Center Max is the GPU. The Xeon Max, where they actually put HBM dies on the CPU.
It was Sapphire Rapids, and it came with 64 gigs of HBM3. Yep.
So let's think about MI300 Instinct and what they're doing with HBM3E. AMD is getting really good with their APUs, and they're getting really good at putting HBM. They've got 288 gigabytes of HBM3 per MI350 now.
Yeah.
Insane amount of VRAM. Like, whoa. They're going to get really good at that. And the data center stuff always eventually trickles into the house.
Yeah. Well, so supposedly, now this is in rock and patches, so massive grain of salt.
Yeah.
There's something called Strix Halo. Now, what that is, we have no definitive knowledge of.
No way of knowing.
But the rumor mill is saying that it has, I think, 40 CUs, but it's 16 cores. It's like a big sort of ultra premium laptop, sort of fighting M3 Max and M3 Pro from Apple, rather than sort of a handheld device. But I could sort of see a trickle down of say let's say 8 cores and that big of a GPU or sort of that sort of movement moving forward.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, for basically what everybody's talking about, the MI300A is basically just the ultimate freaking gaming machine on one chip.
Just add some ROPs and some raster stuff, and we'll be good.
Yeah, the one thing with the MI300A is it at its sub level, at its base level, it is still just AMD graphics. Now they don't have raster support in it. They don't have your traditional, DX Vulkan.
They yanked out the encoders in favor of memory bandwidth.
Exactly. But the root technology is just RDNA 3.
Yeah. It's Vega derived, actually. It's GFX 9.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's right. It's Vega with... Calling it Vega is really kind of a misnomer, but
288 gigs of RAM.
But it's fun. The ISA is GFX 9 based to a degree.
Yeah. Radeon 7 sitting right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, could you imagine? That'd be hilarious if they
Yeah.
Well, the other thing with, sorry, I know I'm data center nerd, so I'm going to keep bringing it back around.
That's all right.
But the unified x86 core, right? So Grace Hopper is a really, really interesting thing, but it's ARM, and you got to do ARM things. And Geerling guy will, chastise me for teasing ARM, but I don't care. He's not here. I got the other Jeff.
No. You have the Jeff. He's other Jeff.
He's the other Jeff. That's right.
He's other Jeff. Don't you come on this show and spread that slander.
Jeff.
The x86 having the unified memory with the GPU, that's so cool. The things that you can do with that, from just the software perspective of being able to push stuff around that quickly, amazing. And like I said, that stuff all eventually trickles down into consumers. So what that's going to leave on the table in 5 years or 10 years for gaming and in the entertainment side, I'm here for it. I'm excited. I can't wait.
So there's a comment in the chat saying, I'm surprised that they changed the Instinct naming scheme. Think of MI300 as a platform series, not as a architecture series.
Right.
Think of it as AM4 or AM5, right? We had Zen 2, Zen 3, Zen 4, Zen 5. We have CDNA 3, CDNA 4 on the same platform, which implies that MI400 is not going to be using the same platform. What they'll change, who knows?
Think of it, if you want a car reference, think of it like a Camaro. You can get a V6 or you can get a supercharged V8. It's still a Camaro at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's just different levels to it.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and switch gears. And let's jump over to Team Blue for a little bit. Like I said, on Wednesday's show, we did a little bit of a deep dive into Sierra Forest, but I know Cheese, you especially, you wanted to talk about Lions Cove, and that is pretty much the one announcement that I didn't talk about on Wednesday's show from the big 3 press conferences. So start us off.
So Lion Cove sort of it's a much so people are headlining 14% IPC. That's not the news story here. Great, who cares? That's honestly not the news story.
That's the easy number to point out and go, hey, look, it's cool. Moving on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The news story is one, they're now starting to optimize certain versions of cores for certain markets. So people were thinking that Lion Cove did not have hyperthreading. And that is correct for Lunar Lake.
Correct.
But
I
that's
get
not
it.
correct. Yes. But that's not.
That's a good one, George. That's a good one.
Thanks for acknowledging the pun that I put there. But that's not right for let's say Arrow Lake. There hasn't been details announced, but they could in theory add it back. It depends on what they think the market segment needs. So I think that that's really more of a headline, the headline news. Another thing is Intel has had a unified mass scheduler since time immemorial.
Yeah.
What that means is integer and vector operations run on the same scheduler. Well, with Lion Cove, they've split that out. Now they have, much like AMD or like ARM chips, they have an integer scheduler and a vector scheduler. They're separate. I go into more detail in the article that I wrote about it. But basically that allows you to have more ports. Yeah. Yeah, if you scroll down, I think.
Yep. Yeah, splitting the scheduler right here.
Yeah, basically it allows you to have more ports without having to add all the complexity and forwarding networks and all that stuff that you would need when you're extending a bigger and bigger unified scheduler. And then the last thing that I talk about was what was the second section?
Core
the
hierarchy.
Yeah,
core
the cache
hierarchy, and yeah.
So I went back and forth with Intel on this, and the L0, as it's being called, is really what the old L1 is.
Yeah.
And this new L1 is actually a new intermediate cache between the L0 and the L2. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting change. It's again the first cache hierarchy change they've had since, I believe, since Ring was introduced. No, Penryn? I think Penryn. Somebody in the chat will absolutely correct me on this, but I think those were the first consumer chips with L3.
I don't remember.
I think. Anyway, at least at Sandy Bridge.
Yeah.
This is a major change. Yes, we had the L4 back with Broadwell and Haswell and Skylake,
yeah.
but those were additions to the LLC. They were not changes within the private cache hierarchy.
Right.
So yeah, very, very. I just saw what you posted in chat.
Dang it, Jordan! I can't take you anywhere.
No, he's why we can't have nice things. But yeah, so I think that's very interesting. Now, I'll let you. Sorry, I'm going too far in my head. I'm thinking about 5 steps too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's sort of my opinion on Skylake, Lion Cove, excuse me.
Skylake.
Yes.
Yes. It always comes back to Skylake, right?
Absolutely. It's all Skylake.
It
always has been Skylake.
It's Skylake all the way down.
There's
the joke.
After Skylake, what was the next one?
Skylake was
and then it was Coffee Lake.
Coffee
but
Lake
Coffee architecturally was very similar.
Yeah.
And then you had Willow Cove / Cypress Cove, which was Tiger Lake and
Well, my theory was they realized they had done such a good job with Skylake. They were like, shit, this is the lake. Everything else is just a river, a stream, or a cove off of here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Vince from Circuit Rewind chiming in. Itanium 2 had L3 cache.
Mm.
Oh, Itanium.
Ugh. Less said about that, the better.
Next.
The less said about that, the better.
No wonder I forgot about that. I had blocked it from my mind entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Vince, for that.
I'm gonna send the therapy bill your way because I'm gonna need,
You know
I'm
what?
gonna need another 2 years to get that back out of my head.
I can get him back right now. You ready?
Uh-oh.
This is the game. You all lose.
You just ended every millennial's life.
Also, every Gen Zer's life. Thanks,
Yeah.
George.
I had a running gag, so quick tangent. For the last 20 years, I've been a manager of a local haunted house. We're one of the most successful haunted houses in Oregon. We run every October. And one of my main jobs is staff management, training actors, that kind of thing. We have 40 actors in our haunted house, and I'm usually the guy that tells you how to do your spot and what your responsibilities are, and oversees kind of the general
Like a
operation.
showrunner.
Right, yeah, I'm a showrunner, yeah. Anyway, years and years and years ago, the game was very popular, and so during dead times in the haunted house, we just hear, "I lost the game," and then it would echo throughout the entire haunted house. We convinced me and the owner's son, we convinced everyone in the haunted house that no, I won the game. and so it would go through, and I'd go, "No, I won the game." And they're like, "How did you win the game?" I said, "I won the game." And so I won the game. I didn't lose. I won the game.
Yeah.
You won the game.
So again in chat, I see thoughts on Skymont. Skymont's looking very interesting, and I think it's going to have to make us rethink what we think of as a efficient core. Back when M1 was announced from Apple, people were blown away by its efficiency, but also by how big it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing that on the Intel side as well, is that it is large, at least in terms of some of the core structures, but it is also looking to be very efficient. I know you had some comments on it.
I think while you're gathering your comments, I think Intel coming out with performance and efficiency, I think, was a stopgap in that, hey, let's get some more cores in here, but we obviously can't cram more performance cores onto this chip because we're already in a thermal runaway situation. So let's just name them performance and efficiency, and then we'll explain why you have high power and low power a la Big Little for ARM. And now they've established that nomenclature, and they're kind of stuck with that nomenclature. And so you can't come out with a low power core now without people just going, "Oh, it's an efficiency core."
Right.
Yeah.
Part of that was marketing coming back and biting them in the ass.
The Kleenex of cores. You can't bring me anywhere. It's okay.
Can't have nice things.
Yeah.
So I see in the chat, copying ARM's homework. Not, I mean, you could say that the whole heterogeneous architecture was an ARM thing first, but that has been in the academia for at least 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's been, that has been in consideration for a long, long time. And frankly, ARM's little core, and I'm talking about the A500 series, it's really not comparable to what Intel is even calling an E core or an LPE core. It's very much designed for like standby and power in very like sort of standby power, but also area efficiency is what the A500 series were designed for, but they're not performant at all. They're very slow and frankly not even power efficient. They're just very low power.
Mhm.
That's a key distinction that you have to make.
Yeah.
They're not power efficient, they're low power.
Right. Just
So
because you draw a insignificant amount of power doesn't mean you use it well.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. You can still be inefficient. Speaking of inefficiency and power and stuff,
Uh-oh.
I have something that I need to share with the world.
Oh boy.
I sent you a picture. It has SMCI_OC on there. This is something that I think more people should know about, and this is not me shilling. This is like I actually think it's kind of cool. Supermicro is putting out a rack server that from the factory is overclockable
Yes. There we go.
with the 96 core Threadripper, and they showed it to me this week.
Yeah.
Not the art. No. It's in the pictures.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Let me.
That was about X14. That's Intel.
Okay. Let me grab.
Jeff has it.
Yep, it's in here somewhere.
Actually, it's an interesting concept because they're starting to understand and recognize that the people who are buying rack mount workstations, who are looking to get every last drop of performance out of their stuff, is...
You sent me all raw pictures.
Oh, you can't open raw. I was like, he's gonna love this. He can do his own color grading. He can pull it up. It's gonna be fabulous.
Right. No, my problem is I show everything inside of Firefox, and Firefox itself can't open raw photos.
Okay. Well, take my word for it.
I'm on. So this is like my 5th show being 100% on Linux. So I'm on Zorin OS right now.
How are you going to run Copilot on Linux?
It's kind of the idea. Is the Windows Manager. I'm using Pop! OS's tiling manager, and I can set it up for a live show. But then if I open another window, it messes everything up. And so I've got it so I can open files, and then I can open a file in Firefox, and then I can show the window on Firefox. But if I need to open GIMP and save a DNG to something else, we'll never get it back.
Okay. Well, but how is Microsoft going to collect all your telemetry if you're on Linux?
I'm not switching 100% to Linux, although I've been really, really pleased with Linux on this particular workstation. This is where I do all of my day-to-day work. This is where I do all my writing, all my benchmarking, all my video capture. It's where I do my live streaming.
That's an interesting... Okay, so that brings up a really interesting tangent. So I did something similar probably 6 months ago. I think one of our colleagues in our friend group had asked for, if you drive Linux daily, tell me why. And I had recently switched one of my laptops that I use in the data center over to running Ubuntu full time. And it's to the point where that workstation now sits in my room on the desk, and it's something I reach for. It's to the point where I'm grabbing it because it's not like, oh, well, the darn backlight's not going to switch, or the touchpad's going to be screwy, or this one doesn't have Bluetooth.
Yeah.
It's to the point where it's reach it and get it. And that kind of clicked in my head about, oh, wow, we're kind of where we talked about where we're going to go with Linux forever, right?
That has been my... Oh, go ahead, Cheese.
Sort of to quote Jensen, it just works. It's like going back to the original topic is it just works.
That's actually kind of a great point. So for years we've been waiting for the year of the Linux desktop. And it's like, yeah, but I use Photoshop. Well, GIMP's just as good. No, it's not. Shut up with that. No, it's not. But we've reached a point, and we can thank Valve for kind of the impetus of this, of being able to run Windows binaries at a native tilt inside of Linux with full acceleration and full hardware access. And that's something we've never had before. But beyond that, let me go down the list of software that I kind of run here.
You think Gabriel signs titties?
God damn it, Jordan.
Can't have nice things.
Can't have nice things. So I needed a box with a lot of PCI Express, and the easiest one that I could grab that was already up and running was actually an X99 rig. So I'm on Broadwell right now. I'm on a 2697 V3.
Ian?
Right?
Ian's been using a Broadwell system since like 2015, 2016.
Since they came out, right? And he's just never
upgraded,
right?
And he just upgraded this year.
Yeah. No, I went back. I went back and grabbed an X99 box and installed Linux, and I've been rocking it. Here's what I run, okay? I've got Chrome, I've got Firefox, I've got all my browsers, that's fine. I've got OBS. OBS is running, but OBS is also running with my Blackmagic DeckLink Quad HDMI card. So I've got 4 4K 60 inputs via HDMI. They all work, and they work natively with OBS. The hardware works with the software, and everything's just kind of it just kind of works. I've got a Discord client installed on here.
You can get Microsoft Office through the web browser now too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Anything that used to be like only Windows,
Right.
85% of them are now available via web apps through whatever web browser you want to use.
Well, and 85% of them are available as good web apps. There's
Right.
some bad ones still, but yes.
Of course.
I do have to say that the Windows version, like the full version of Excel and Word, are better than
There's still things you can't do in the web app. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I switched my video editing to DaVinci Resolve, and I run DaVinci Resolve on this machine. I've been editing my last 6 weeks worth of videos on an X99 rig. I have a 64 core Threadripper. I have a 7980WX right over there. I've been editing on this machine.
The interesting thing about where we're at today with Linux is it's obviously has the massive strong foothold in the data center, right? Think about VMware. Any virtualization thing is, other than, unless you're with Microsoft and using their thing, it's a Linux kernel at the end of the day, or a Unix at least.
Yeah.
We're approaching a point where you either have a web app or you have parity, feature parity, and function parity with Microsoft. And I think that's going to force Microsoft in a way to do both more creative and hopefully more consumer-friendly things down the line, as people start to realize, holy crap, not only do I not have to pay for this, which you should use the donate button on your favorite Linux distro and toss them $1 or $2, because that goes further than you would ever imagine.
Yep.
But
can confirm it. That does help.
Hopefully Microsoft, with all of their money and infinite wisdom in gigantic AI machines that they're running on Azure, can figure out a way to kind of turn it around. Because so I get to test drive a lot of new laptops in my field of work here, and most of them are business laptops, so they come with a business installation of Windows 11. But it's the ads and the tracking, and it's getting so much more intrusive, and it's getting to the point where it's like, why do I have an ad? I'm looking for my tax return from last year. I'm not looking for TurboTax from last year.
Right.
On the internet. Like,
right.
Hopefully they take it to heart and do something with it.
The problem is, as we kind of started off with the beginning of this episode, your data is kind of everything. Your data is the most valuable asset that you have as a user right now. And Microsoft is understanding that. And when they own 96+% of the market, they can kind of do whatever they want.
Right.
Now, Apple certainly has some things to say about that. Linux is starting to have some things to say about that, and we can go back and again thank Valve. On Valve's latest hardware survey, Linux now owns 2% of the gaming market.
That's a good chunk.
That's insane. Now, obviously, a good chunk of that has to do with the Steam Deck being an Arch-based distro. But Linux gaming has gotten so good, it's almost reached feature parity, with the caveat being some anti-cheat stuff. Doesn't work for competitive multiplayer.
I feel like we can blame the anti-cheat people for that.
We can blame the anti-cheat people for that, because it should totally be able to work, especially with how compartmentalized...
Recompile, bro. What are you doing?
A large part is kernel level anti-cheat is just never going to fly in Linux. That will just never, ever, ever be accepted. Which honestly, I think is a good thing. I think kernel level anti-cheat is the bane of anti-cheat, but sort of continuing on the Linux side, I know you have some thoughts on Sierra Forest.
Oh God!
So
that was a zoo. I have an article up right now on a Sierra Forest review that came out in the last day or two. It should be on the homepage if you find it.
Yeah, let me. I was just pulling it up here.
There's a couple comments in there, and I spoke with some friends. That's a heatsink, by the way. I don't know if you've ever seen that much copper attached to a CPU, but it is glorious in person.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's got some definite Genoa Bergamo era vibes to that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they call. There's an abbreviation for it, but it's an enhanced airflow where it goes out from the heatsink. Please. There was some interesting artifacting with Windows after you kind of cross that 128 core area. Things get weird. Things get interesting.
Yeah.
Software doesn't behave the way you think it would because of either a hard-coded value or just a value that the developers never imagined would be possible, like seeing 288 cores in a single system. And with Bergamo chips, for instance, that was 256
threads.
Yeah,
256 threads.
Yeah. No, it was double. It was double that because two socket. Yeah, so 512 threads.
Oh, yeah.
I've got screenshots floating around in my Discord because smoke them if you got them. When it's time to bring out the screenshot of the big server, you power on the big server. But things get weird when you do that, and things were less weird on the AMD platform than they were testing the Sierra Forest platform, in the sense that Bergamo came out 8-9 months ago now, somewhere late last year, where we published a review. Sierra Forest didn't work without using Windows 2025 server. And I get a lot of flack for doing some of the testing that I do under Windows, but here's the thing, it's consistent and it's immeasurable. You can peg it against the last one, against the last one, against the last one, against the last one.
That's exactly how probably 40% of my server CPU testing is as well. It's done inside of Windows, and then I'll do specific use case testing inside of virtual environments or whatever else, but Windows gives you the apples to apples comparison with exact performance numbers, exact specs that you need to see the differences, right? Yeah.
But this was in server 2022 completely broken. I mean, you could click. If I wanted to open the start menu, it would be click, start menu. There was no like in between, like it would just lag I've always bragged about, I mean, some folks might know about like our competitive benchmarking that we do over here, but Windows Task Scheduler has always been historically really good and far superior to the Linux Task Scheduler.
Yes.
Unfortunately, something is a little weird with the Sierra Forest. Now, that could be it's a pre-release platform, that could be it's engineering sample chips, that could be it's engineering BIOS. It could be any number of things that could eventually get ironed out prior to launch.
It could be if you take Windows, just looking at Windows as a platform, their engineers haven't had enough time with super high, individual core counts, because the largest physical core count that we've had has been 128 to this point, times 2 with 256, but then you're working with 2 NUMA nodes, which Windows also does,
which is actually more than 2 NUMA nodes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was actually about to say, I wonder if Bergamo had fewer issues, because realistically, the way that Windows looks at it is not as one monolithic 128.
It looks at it as 4 NUMA times 2 on a 2 socket.
Well, actually, it really looks at it as how many last level caches do you have?
Mm-hmm.
You have 16, if I remember correctly, on Bergamo. So I'm wondering if that sort of the way that AMD's doing it versus how Intel does it, if Windows was less confused with Bergamo than with Sierra Forest.
Because of the NUMA node.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. It's a NUMA node thing. But on the positive side with Sierra, we're out of the 4800 hellhole of DDR5. We're now running actual fast RAM.
Yeah.
6400?
6400, yeah.
Now, I will say, I have to be the negative Nancy. When you ran our benchmarks, our memory bandwidth benchmarks.
Those aren't published. He does have them, though. They're public information at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan was only seeing about 75% of the theoretical, which isn't bad, but isn't great either. That is if I remember correctly, a slight regression on what we saw for Sapphire Rapids.
Mm-hmm.
I think Sapphire Rapids saw about 80% theoretical, and now we're seeing about 75, which ain't great, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that might not know, the micro benchmarks that test the memory and latency, you can adjust the threads, the instruction set. It starts at MMX and goes all the way through IVX512, if I recall, 1 to 64 threads max, which is fine. I think that's a fair limit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the GUI version. On the CLI version, you can go to as many cores as you want.
Well, I'm going to need to talk to somebody about updating that GUI version then.
Okay.
I got threads. Who's going to need more than 512K of RAM, right? Or whatever.
I like many threads that I cannot lie.
What can we possibly do with more than 12 megabytes? Right?
Yeah.
Oops.
Oh, go ahead.
Tanmay wants to know, did Jordo review his wine? How's the wine?
Okay, it's incredibly smooth. It's I'm definitely a white wine guy. The reds have their place. This is incredibly smooth. It's a little earthy. It's a little bit earthy, but not in a bad way. It's more like I'm in nature way. Yeah, it's a dry kind of. I'm not a wine guy, but this is like I would. This is wine. This is good wine.
Yeah.
The bar beer is very much like your pub beer that you were describing earlier. It's what you want out of a cheap light beer. It's good.
Yeah.
We still have one more beer to review. From Taiwan. This is an interesting thing. So I'll grab it right now. So I think I opened it with, we were, wanting to experience some of the local beers. And so we found bar beer, but I was looking for something that was, potentially a little bit better. So I found something that is good value and quality.
Wow. That's those are important distinctions in a beer.
It's both. It's got everything. Yeah. It's everything you want.
One sec.
Watch him just pull out like this $25 beer out of.
I doubt game engines are focusing on beyond 8 cores. The problem with that is so much of that workload is single threaded.
Yeah.
It's why Sierra Forest, for example, you'll find Sierra Forest in a lot of cloud hosting providers that, cool, I have 144 threads. That means I can run 144 WordPress websites for my customers on this one CPU. And that's what it's going to be for.
Yep. Name of the wine.
Julius Klein, Julius K. Klein. That might be like an Anne Klein.
Julius Klein.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I can type it into the chat.
Yeah. Come on, focus. As AVE says, focus, you frig. Anyway. No, good stuff. And again, big shout out to, hopefully Jacob watches at least part of this show.
I hope so. I know he's tuned in a couple times, so
yeah. I'll make sure I spam him the link. Maybe you can too.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I was gonna grab a can of pub beer, but I think all my cans are upstairs. I thought I had one here.
Oh no! Someone drank all the pub beer in the house.
Instead of good value, good quality, pub beer at the bottom. So it says pub beer, and then it says cheap fun.
Very, very appropriate.
Yeah.
We know what we're about, son.
We have our market segment. We know what we're doing.
That's right.
It's their marketing strategy.
That's the entire front of the can, though. Is pub beer, cheap fun, and that's all it says.
Yep. I've had it. It's good stuff, actually.
It's good. It's good enough. Yeah, it's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're on the topic of, we're on the show topic is Computex. Mm-hmm. So there was something that I saw that was really funny. I don't think I sent you a picture. There's now companies making water blocks that you can buy for your Gen 5 PCIe and NVMe.
I saw that.
I did make a report on it. It's out there somewhere, but it is hilarious. Put your M.2 on your water loop.
Is that SwiftTech that was doing that, or who was doing that one? The giant one.
Oh, the giant one? I haven't seen the giant one. The one that I saw was actually fairly small water block that you can stick right onto your M.2. They even give you a riser card because most motherboards won't have the clearance to get the water block around the bottom of it. They give you a riser card for the M.2 to come off the board a little further. It's in the shorts. It definitely was published in the last few days.
Yeah.
It's there were some interesting things at Computex. Very niche stuff. I don't mean this in a disparaging way or anything like that, but some stuff that you would really only find in the APAC region. Yeah. Was very cool. It was really cool to see because, again, living in the data center, I don't get out. You found it? Yeah.
No, this guy. This is what I was talking about.
Oh, good Lord. I saw those.
Oh, God.
I saw
is a SwiftTech M.2 all-in-one liquid cooler for your NVMe drive. It clamps into your motherboard and is as tall as your graphics card.
Is it bad that I want one?
I want one! That's the funny thing.
Well, I just don't want to even think about the pressure that you're putting on that poor M.2 slot.
Right.
Like the leverage.
That's an M2 screw that's holding that into the horizontal slot. Yeah. But no, that's the Dark Waterflow 01 SSD cooler.
Yes, we are aware that we are being stalked by Bluey and Bingo. Yes.
Oh, yes. On that topic, another tangent. Jeff will know exactly how expensive branded merchandise is in the United States. Officially licensed. I'm not sure if this is. I don't endorse it, but I got.
It does appear to be. If you look at the tag, it does appear to be. Like
it appears to be licensed official merchandise. I got Bluey and Bingo for $30 US today. So
that's a pretty solid deal.
Dads will know.
As a father of 3, with Bluey on a constant loop in my house.
Oh, your house too?
My house too.
So Bluey and Bingo are getting the plane ride home because Solid deal.
Yeah. Did you buy them their own ticket?
No, unfortunately, well, they have just enough room in the suitcase to
Oh wait,
fit.
you were saving money on licensed merchandise. That's right.
Yes. Yes.
Hey, honestly, for some licensed merchandise, buying the plane ticket might actually be cheaper.
Yep.
The Legos were surprisingly the Polaroid Lego kit. I think I did the conversion was $60 for the Polaroid camera Lego kit, and I'm pretty sure that's like $100 or more.
Yeah, that's 100 or 120 here, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
129.
$129.
$80 retail.
Okay.
More realistically, $100 on like Amazon and whatnot.
So not bad if you're here.
Yeah.
Taiwan's been a lot of fun though. George and I had a really good time actually.
Sort of unrelated to tech, the food here has been utterly delicious.
Yeah.
Other than last night. That wasn't so good.
What did you do last night?
So in my infinite wisdom, from the hotel bar / restaurant, I ordered a steak because there was nothing else that really interested me.
Uh-huh.
And it was very, very fatty and bristly, and the stupid knife wasn't really a steak knife.
It was a butter knife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a butter knife.
So I tried to eat this massive piece, and it
was too much.
Yeah, it was too much. So I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm good. Compare that to
We went to a Japanese steakhouse tonight for dinner, and that was
for lunch. It was for
that was lunch.
Lunch.
I don't know time. What
Okay,
is
time?
That's the interesting thing too. So we're staying at the courtyard next to the convention center. It's one subway stop away. It's obviously indicative of the environment, right? It's a very wet, very tropical environment, but you could probably very easily go days without actually physically going outside and not miss it.
Yeah.
Everything's so connected. The transit system is so well designed. It's punctual. This is my first time out in Taipei, so that was some of my observations from it. And clean too.
Yeah. If you're ever in the Taipei area, even though some people will call it a tourist trap, Din Tai Fung at great dumplings and great braised beef noodle soup. Delicious.
Nice.
But yeah.
Every year, the 2-3 months leading up to Computex, I'm like, I'm gonna go. This is the year I'm just gonna finally buy the ticket. I'm gonna go. And there's always something that comes up that I have to stay home for. And I mean,
if you can go next
4 years ago, it was global lockdown and no flights. But every year since then, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go this year, and have never made it out there.
If you can do it next year, absolutely highly recommend.
Let's start planning it now. It's actually going to be earlier in the year next year.
Yeah, it's going to be
middle of May.
Yeah, May 20th to the 24th, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Next year's the year I go. So, hell or high water, I'm just gonna book the ticket and tell my wife it's all on you. Whatever comes up.
you might have certain papers when you come back home if you do that.
Yeah. Like I said, I live my life by a strict moral code.
As long as he doesn't sign any T-shirts, he'll be all right.
That's right.
So, actually, because this just popped into my head now for whatever reason, my brain works in mysterious ways. AMD never announced this at the keynote, but there were slides for it. The W7900 slot with 48 gigs of RAM at, I think, $3,500. I think is... I don't know if any press sites have covered it yet.
I did see a little footnote somewhere that the 7900 is coming as a 2-slot card.
Yeah. Actually, the more important news that I'm surprised that wasn't talked about is that ROCm is actually going to be supported on WSL finally, which I think is a really good move. Speaking to that, that is something that I've been trying to work. Well, I think all of us have been trying to push
Yeah.
AMD into the right direction of get your software stack in order.
Please keep investing in software.
Yeah.
Because the hardware is there on paper.
Yeah. My biggest push has been get ROCm everywhere. Get it from laptops all the way up to MI300X and everything in between.
Yep.
I've got MI210s in the lab right now, and those are cool, but I still find myself, and part of this is I'm still media and I still have to travel and do these meetings and do all this stuff, so I can't be a software developer all day. But I find myself still going, shoot, I wish this was better documented. Shoot, I wish this had this feature. And they're getting there. And I find every time I turn around and there's an AMD announcement and it's ROCm, X.1, X.5, whatever the increment is, and then we get the major release, they're getting there. They're getting there. But they were so far behind the cue ball with CUDA, you can't blame them too hard.
Yeah. They've been making a lot of the right strides. And sort of that's been my big push, is trying to get ROCm everywhere. I know one of your big pushes, Jeff, has been trying to get SRIOV support. And I think that's a big untapped market that AMD could try and hit.
Speaking of SRIOV, I still
can't take them anywhere.
Anywhere.
Those things are interesting.
Yeah.
Do we want to go down that rabbit hole?
Go ahead. I'm several wine glasses and a beer deep. I don't care at this point.
So after we got done with our data center testing of Intel Flex GPUs, we went down the gaming rabbit hole and ended up at a point where we had to basically reserve out a chunk of the SRIOV to not load the card too much so it wouldn't purple screen to death the host.
Yep.
And
that's actually not all that uncommon. Even in NVIDIA's implementation with vGPU that didn't use SRIOV, it was their internal kernel switcher. That had issues of you could potentially overload a card. And I've ran into it on basically every GPU splitter that I've ever ran. Is if you try to benchmark like 6 instances on a card, it's going to overutilize hardware somewhere.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Those Flex GPUs, I mean, you and I have talked about it extensively together in private.
Yeah.
But I think the take-home message of if you use it in an office kind of VDI setting, you're never going to see that unless every single person clicks Google Earth at the same time.
Right.
You're never going to see that. When we start sticking these things into these weird edge case things, it makes for some really interesting behaviors. Talking with different folks around the industry, it sounds like that Intel Flex GPUs have kind of won the open source VDI acceleration in the sense that nobody else even really cares about it. But I think it's still something that's pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if only 5% of your customer base wants to use this thing, if no one else is serving that market, that's 5% of the market that is 100% yours for the taking. And I'm waiting for a company to swoop in and just do it, because the tech is already there for all 3 companies. It's just make it accessible.
And it means so much to the end user too. SRIOV, Intel Flex, it's fun.
Yeah.
AMD, please, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Just even if it's a fairly bare bones implementation, that's better than nothing.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I want it fully featured, but even just getting the host driver support and the client driver would be great.
Yep.
And from there,
So I know you have some weird open source operating system that you're using and you can't open my pictures, but there was one other thing that I saw at Computex that was really cool. And actually I've seen these guys in the past. You may be able to look it up. It's Zutacore. There's probably some photos on our site about them. They're doing the data center equivalent of that Noctua phase change cooling, where we've got a couple short videos, at least by now.
Boom.
Yeah. Okay, so this is way back. This is early in the tech, but the principle remains the same. They have a way to essentially cool unlimited wattage with this solvent-based coolant
hmm
that you would think, right? You don't think of this in terms of flow. There's essentially what amounts to like a toilet float inside that heat sink. So the pump kind of just keeps a little bit of line pressure on there. And then as the chip boils it off, that float, goes up and down like a little toilet float, like a
Yeah.
toilet valve in
And the
there.
pump lets a little bit of that positive pressure in, fills the voids, and then when it hits that
Yeah.
equilibrium point again, it lets a little bit more coolant in. Yeah.
Exactly. So they were showing off with YWin, their Grace Hopper, Grace Blackwell,
Yeah, that's what
super
this
high wattage.
screenshot from StorageReview is from. So this is the GB200. So they've got two of
Yeah.
those phase change coolers on a Grace Hopper or on a
Yeah.
Blackwell system.
Yeah. So we saw that in person this week. And the idea of I think their official quote is 2,800 watts, but it's probably I'm told that there's basically no thermal limit. It's a die area limit on what you can actually cool. That they're doing some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other cooling thing that we saw that was really neat is in the Asus booth, Asus and Intel partnered up for a hybrid immersion cooling. Now, I've got on the fence feelings about immersion cooling.
was that the ASRock booth?
No, it was in the Asus Sofa Suite. I don't think I brought you in there.
Okay, no.
Not for lack of trying, just it didn't work out.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Hybrid immersion cooling. And I've got mixed feelings about immersion cooling. I'd be curious to hear what you think, but let me tell you how these guys are doing it now.
Yeah, go for it.
They've got a manifold at the top of the immersion tank, and then they run tubes onto the CPU. So the cooled immersion liquid that comes back out and on the return gets blasted out over the top of the CPU. And they're able to get like an extra 15 or 20% worth of TDP out of the blocks by blasting the cold liquid directly onto it, and then it just dissipates into the tank.
Yeah, immersion cooling has been around literally since the dawn of putting servers into a rack and going, how do we cool all this? It definitely has its place. The problem with immersion cooling is it's never the most practical or easy or maintenance-free solution that it should be. You're adding a layer of complexity to... you have to watertight seal your server enclosures, which means hardware maintenance and failed hardware turns from a 1-hour task into a 7-hour task for a tech. And so if a server fails, you literally just disable it.
You need to put full PPP on to work with the stuff.
Right. And so yeah, it has never been or will ever be a mainstream cooling solution. Yes, it's wildly efficient, but even compared to the wild inefficiencies of like whole rack water cooling, where you're just like pumping river water in, where you only get like 30% return for your server stacks, that's still a better option.
I mean, that's what El Capitan and Frontier are essentially doing.
Right.
And I think Aurora as well. They're not doing immersion, and there are good reasons why they're not. Though, speaking on cooling at the Asus booth, there's these guys called Fabric 8 Labs. They were at Hot Chips last year. The final Hot Chips. They're partnering with Asetek and Asus, and they claim that they're essentially doing cold plates from 3D printing and sintering, which I think is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that they get 3 degrees Celsius per 100 watts better than what Asetek can currently make. So, like, standard CPU is, let's say, 200 watts, that's 6C better. On something like Blackwell, where it's 1,000 watts, that's potentially 30C better, right? I actually think that is pretty cool, quite literally.
So hold on a second here. So talking about with Firefox, where's it? Oh, come on.
Oh, we could go home labby for a second while you pull that up.
I got it. Speaking of sintering 3D printing, if you guys have been, I know you guys have been privy to my temperature sensor. I had some cases done up in sintered nylon, and so those will be arriving here shortly. So sneak peek of that. Joel, 3D printing nerd, printed those out for me on the new Micronix $3,000 SLS machine. So you'll actually see these cases in his video. I can tell you already, looking at it, dimensional accuracy, especially on my standoffs for the top plate, this looks more accurate than the FDM prints that I've been getting. Now, whether or not there's flex or warp because it is nylon remains to be seen. But those are really cool.
Those are super cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited to play with that thing, by the way. By the way, thank you for copying and pasting the exact name I typed in the Google form. UPS will deliver anything.
They really will. You're welcome.
I don't know what I expected.
You should have assumed that he would have at least tried.
What's funny is I didn't even batch that. I saw the name printed and I'm like, screw it, I'll type that in.
I didn't think enough people he must have saw this and went, all right, fine.
Yeah.
That was good. I'm really excited. So I was in Vegas the week before last for Dell Tech World. I'm here for Computex now. I go home tomorrow. I'll be home for 5 days. And then I'm back in Vegas again for HP Discover. And then I'm home for a week. And then I'm in LA for an event that I don't think, it's an event in LA. And then I'm down in San Diego the same week. And I get to play. This is actually, I'm kind of excited for this.
Yeah.
I get to go play with the negative pressure liquid loop. So if you've seen our video where we cut the line with the liquid flowing through and it sucks it out from both ends, we get to go do that in person. So
nice. I've always wanted to try that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
And apparently there's it's a glycol solution, so you can get it really cold.
Yeah.
I'm looking at in you heard it here first, but no promises. I'm looking at bringing out some really unique things to hopefully do some sort of high speed, low drag type clocking thing with the tech. Hopefully we can make that work.
Well,
But
my air temp sensors are good to, we'll say officially freezing, and that's just based on the casing, but the sensor itself will go down to negative 40°C.
Okay.
So
Maybe we can get that in there.
yeah.
Yeah, because all I need is power, right? A
Yeah,
little bit of network, a little bit of power.
Yep, yeah, it's just USB power.
Okay.
And then Wi-Fi out, so yeah. There's been some really exciting developments on the development side of this as well, based on user feedback, and then talking to my developer and saying, hey, is this thing possible to implement? We'll talk a little bit off air about the version 2 that will be coming out in Q4, or the first final version that will be coming out Q4 this year.
Well, now you've got me all excited.
I think you're really going to be excited for what we're coming out with. So,
okay. Yeah, let's definitely talk on that, because I've got friends on the other side of those that were looking at that project too with very keen eyes.
Yeah. We're making this enterprise friendly and easier to deploy, and a couple key features that like you definitely want. Those will be integrated into the final version. I'll tell you more.
So I saw a bit up in the chat talking about Cam 2.
Yes.
There's a new Cam 2 standard. And I think
So it's ultimately for a signaling reason, right?
Yes.
But you have a lot of other reasons that.
So I actually think that it's cool because you don't have to worry about how many DIMMs you're going to have to support. You just support the Cam 2 module, and that gives you multiple channels, potentially even multiple ranks. So I actually think that it's a good move forward. But
I think it's a positive move forward. There are so many things, and I've been touching on this for a couple of years, about the ATX standard, about the way computers are assembled, that needs a serious reevaluation of is this the proper way we should be doing things still? Because the ATX standard,
ATX connector.
Right, 24-pin ATX connector. PCI slots, like how they're oriented, how much weight they can support. What are the? The cool thing about PCs is the ATX standard came out in '95 officially, replacing the AT standard.
Yeah.
And we've never changed it since. We've done different form factors, but the base mechanics of ATX have been the same for over 30 years now. And we've been seeing the limits of that, especially as like graphics cards have exploded in size, and we're expecting 4 pounds of graphics card to be held in with a single M3 screw on the front of a case, and that's where all the leverage is at.
Yeah, if you don't want a 5-slot cooler on your GPU.
I didn't say I don't want a 5-slot cooler. What I'm saying is I don't want it to rip the port out of the board.
Potato, tomato.
As a consequence of that. But going down to things like DIMMs, we're starting to run into signaling issues where, especially once we hit DDR5, we started hitting a hard wall of, well, why are laptops getting DDR5 8500, but then my desktop, I can't even run 7000 stably. Well, it comes down to signaling issues, and because of the form factor that we've chosen to be the standard, it's not possible anymore.
Intel tried to create the BTX standard back in, I think, the mid-2000s, but that went absolutely nowhere.
Yeah, Dell and Intel were the two that were really on board BTX. And for those who don't know, BTX is basically a mirror image ATX. What it does is it puts the PCI slot on the bottom of the case, but also the PCB itself in a way that's stacked vertically on top of that. And so your weight comes down onto the PCI card of all of your heatsink and everything else, and it helps the motherboard leverage that weight instead of hanging all of it off.
And this gets even more complicated in today's world. So setting aside the RAM speeds, right? In my lab, I've got 10,000 megahertz DDR5 posting in Windows. We're we're playing really hard into that, like fast DRAM speed, but that's specialized motherboards with balanced traces, with the best bin CPUs and memory controllers.
Yeah.
Where you start getting into these weirdnesses with hanging off the weight, hanging out, getting fast signaling and stuff like that. The board flex itself. When BATX or when BTX was a thing, 4-layer boards were common. We're at like 8-layer minimum now for just about anything you want.
Yeah.
That the simple flexing of those boards, if they're not installed properly, will absolutely crush your timings, will crush anything that you've got going with signaling. And it's you're right. We should be rethinking how we're doing all of it.
Yeah.
Is that going to suck? Is there going to be a weird transition phase where we've got CAM modules with Intel Skylake CPU sockets? Maybe. It's going to be everywhere. There's no rhyme or reason to the way that we need to get there, but we do need to rethink it because it's not sustainable where we have to go.
Yeah.
And I saw a comment talking about that they're disappointed that they didn't go wider on boards this year. I mean, the current standard, I think, already supports up to 96 gigabytes on a single module for dual channel. That's enough for 99% of what...
More than that.
Yeah, like 99.59 of people who are going to buy these systems.
Yeah.
If you need more RAM than that, Threadripper Pro and the W series from Intel all exist.
Yes. My disappointment with the current consumer platforms is still the lack of PCI Express. Because if you install a graphics card and a single NVMe drive, you have maxed out your expansion. And
soapbox.
Boy.
We're getting comfortable. All right.
Soapboxing.
You're touching on something that's near and dear to my heart because I do love my
Speaking of arbitrary roadblocks.
Okay, so I very ignorantly will publicly proclaim I wish AMD didn't gatekeep PCI Express behind an extra zero on the price tag. The problem with that turns into an economics thing extremely quickly, because let's say they gave you a Ryzen 90 whatever mid-tier prosumer chip, the retimers on the board, all that stuff, those bombs cost a lot of money. That stuff doesn't come cheap, and so now you're going to piss people off. So now you have all your PCI Express lanes, but you're going to be mad because the board is $900. And
correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't X470 boards or X390 or whatever the bloody hell chips that were on X590, X570, aren't those boards already pushing like $400?
They're not that price anymore, though. That's the problem. So when you move into today's generation and stuff, the prices are still astronomical. And I've had this debate with a handful of manufacturers down to the consumer side. Again, normally I stick on the workstation side where money isn't an object or a server. We're definitely just like, ooh, money. When you bring it down to the consumer side, nobody except for a very small portion of the population is going to ever want to pay $1,000 for a motherboard that has 8 PCI Express X16 slots, because those old PCI Gen 2 days, again, this comes back to the motherboard layers, right? So we're at minimum huge amount of layers. We've got crazy BOM cost on the redrivers, and if we even were able to wire that up to the CPUs, if they supported it, the CPU price is going to go back up. So here we are, we're in Threadripper land. Welcome to what it costs in 2024 for a lot of PCI Express lanes. I'm with you, Jeff, 100%. I want more PCI Express lanes. Give me all of them.
So
Unfortunately, the barrier to entry on it's obscene.
I have a bit of I guess you could call this a hot take. M.2 drives do not need 4 lanes in PCIe 5.0 systems.
Neither do
Nope.
U.2 in the enterprise. They're
Nope.
gonna
2 lanes will be fine.
Yep.
Yeah, heck, 1 lane in a lot of consumer devices would probably be fine.
Yep.
That's still effectively PCIe 3.0 X4.
If you look at
Yep.
the MGX platform, is my ASRock rack video or article out yet? I don't know.
Let me open
Supermicro Intel Xeon 6. It's not. It's okay. I can still talk about it. ASRock Rack did a really interesting thing with their NVIDIA MGX platform. So if you aren't familiar with the MGX, it's basically a 4 or 5U server that can take PCI Express cards.
Yeah.
And by PCI Express cards, we mean H100 PCI Express or A6000 or L40S. They put 16 E1.S drives on the front of it. And they were able to achieve that storage density on that server by taking half of them over to the CPU root complex and the other half through the PCI Express switch that's shared with the backboard. So you get a really interesting concept of I get GPU direct with my storage, which also gets shared with my networking. So I've got all this RDMA stuff that gets really fun. But also my CPU has really fast access to some stuff. So I can do GPU batch operations. I can do asynchronous batch operations. Is that a word?
Operations? I was going to let it go.
Yeah.
We're going to let it go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Let it roll.
There's fun concepts, but when I was talking to some of the folks over there about the implementation of it, they were like, oh yeah, like this was really hard for us to figure out, but we figured it out. And as I went to all of the other booths and all the other manufacturers in that space making an MGX platform, which there's unique traits to each one, nobody else was doing 16 drives in the server.
Yeah.
Because it is so freaking hard to get that much PCI Express on there. And we're in the era of storage needs to be PCI Express to be relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so what's going to be interesting is sort of what happens after PCIe 5 on the consumer side. Are we actually going to get PCIe 6 in when server gets it? Because I seriously don't think that.
You think you're just going to skip it and go to 7?
No, I think so. Actually, no, actually, we might get 6, but we might not get 7. No, I'm trying to remember so PCIe 6 does not require any PCB upgrades, but PCIe 7 does.
Yeah.
And I think we're seriously going to have to ask the question, is faster PCIe going to be worth it?
We're already at the point with 5.0 where heat sinking your M.2 drive, at least with fins, with a little Raspberry Pi style fins, is mandatory.
Yeah.
And where are we headed from there? And what does that look like? And I think that starts with a node process change. From there, maybe there's no reason why it can't get better. And
can I be the pragmatist here?
Do it. I dare you.
We're going to get PCI 6, PCI 7 on consumer boards, because why would you develop for the enterprise and then not just copy those implementations, data signaling, etc., to your consumer boards?
Thank you, Jeff.
Why re-engineer and why engineer a PCI Express 6 bus path on a motherboard for your server implementation, and then as the same company, as an ASRock, as an Asus, as a Gigabyte, as a whoever, then go through and re-engineer for PCI Express 5?
Because
when your chip supports PCI Express 6.
Are we going to stick with slots, or are we going to move to cabled PCIe implementation? That's actually a serious question that's being asked
all the
right
enterprise stuff right now. Every single booth that I saw had the MCXIO.
MCIO.
No,
MCIO,
not the
yeah.
MCIO. The MCXIO, the one that's you can either do a riser card into it or you can do cables. But it has power. It has 70 watts worth of power through it too.
Yeah.
Through the same slot. Is that MCIO?
I think it's MCIO.
It's still MCIO. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Us data center guys, we're going to be in the trenches. We're going to figure it out for you gamers. It's okay. Don't worry.
It's one of those things that it's not worth it for the consumer side of things. But if you've already engineered it, you're not going to engineer a worse solution because economically that doesn't make sense for you.
One day someone's going to go, oh shit, we can do it like that.
Right.
Well, that's why I think if we go cabled, I think we're going to stop at 6, at least for a long time.
Yeah.
If we stick with slots, maybe we can continue.
But someone has to come out and make the bold decision of we're going to do as a 16x MCIO cable to support or an 8x MCIO cable to support a consumer graphics card, and we're going to change the form factor of the PC that we sell, and you're going to be in this weird limbo for a while because it's not a slot, it's going to be a cable solution or whatever else. Going back to my thoughts of we need to rethink the ATX form factor.
Yeah.
There's going to be growing pains. There's going to be things that are incompatible, and we haven't had that in 30 plus years.
No, I agree.
Who's going to take that step?
Yeah, it would have to be the industry taking the step together.
Mm-hmm.
The only way that I could see
there are people still bitching about modern cases not coming with 5 1/4 drives.
There
are still people out there. But what about my optic drive? Buy a USB.
Well, I've legitimately seen people complain that 32-bit operating systems aren't being well supported anymore. It's like, what year is this?
32-bit should have died with Vista.
That's a hot take.
No, it's not a hot take. We had x64 implementations of Windows XP. We had x64 implementations of Server 2008. When Vista launched, when Longhorn officially launched, they should have said, we're ripping the Band-Aid off 32-bit. You're moving to 64. This is where the industry is at right now. Start programming for it. And they didn't do it. And instead, 32-bit held out until Windows 10.
Well, I mean... So...
They should have said, we're done with 32-bit. They should have said, we're done.
You're right.
So I'm thinking specifically Bunnell, if you remember that from way back in the day. The first Atom CPU was 32-bit.
Right.
So you couldn't quite do that with Vista. You could do it with 7, kind of. Now, by the time 8 and 8.1 hit, yeah.
I would even say the heck with... If Intel is going to come out with a chip that doesn't... Had Microsoft made the decision, we're done with 32-bit, Intel never would have launched a 32-bit Atom. They would have supported the instruction set. And so it was one of those things of you either move and decide we're going to break some backwards compatibility, but everyone is going to be better for it, or you keep re-engineering poor solutions and not moving your industry forward.
So I want to perspective you.
Yeah.
You either put AI on your local PC and let me take all your data and accept it, or you don't.
I moved to Linux.
So you pick the third option.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of what they're doing in that.
I took the blue pill.
They have a track record of doing it on the bit side for sure.
Yeah.
They won't do that because there's other parties that are interested in it.
Yeah.
They'll do it on things where they're the only ones that want it, right?
Yeah.
So I see a comment saying stay ATX forever and force AMD, Intel, and even future ARM CPUs to work on the same motherboard. No, I'm sorry. Super Socket 7 is dead. And
What does that have to do with the ATX form factor?
no, so I think what this is referring to is the same socket.
Oh.
There's no way that all these CPUs are going to use the same socket.
No, I don't think it's fair to demand that everybody uses the same socket. What do you think?
Look, Socket 7 was cool, but it was built on because
It was built on a bed of lies.
it was. Socket 7, by the way, for those who don't know, and you could even go slot 1 versus slot A and 370 versus socket A. They all shared a lot of lineage, up until like the year 2000. There wasn't much electrically different between slot A and slot 1. One was a mirror image of the other. They were physically identical but electrically different. AMD didn't develop their own in-house socket until, 739? 740? Something like that? Their own from-scratch socket.
No, it was further back than that.
You're testing the limits of what I remember.
I know you were barely born then, but...
Yeah. Was it 478? Or was that an
478 was Intel. And I believe that's where AMD started diverting off, because 462 was socket A, and that was
Pentium era, wasn't it?
And that was
it was like Pentium 3, Pentium 4 era.
Yeah, and so that 2001-ish, I believe it was socket 739.
What socket was the original not Athlon 64, the original Athlon on?
739.
Okay, so it was probably 739.
Yeah.
Where there was diversions. Okay.
Yeah.
These guys are all saying 754.
Or 754, excuse me. I was getting 939 confused with 754.
Yes.
Yeah. Because 939, 940 was the next implementation.
Yeah. That was AM2 Plus, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Sorry,
754.
Yeah.
In my defense, it's also been 25 years.
I wasn't even born at that point in time. Consider that I remember those the Athlon days where that split.
Yeah.
I just realized we have like 10 years on this guy.
Yes. Yes. Gee, thanks, Steph. Can't go anywhere.
What year were you born, Cheese?
99. The tail end of 99.
I was married in 2006.
Am I just gonna get laughed at because I'm young?
No.
Is that what the stream is gonna turn into?
No, you carry yourself very well for your age. Let's put it at that.
Yeah.
I remember going, I think it was the ASRock booth. We were talking with someone from there, and I was with Ian, and the person who we were talking with was like, asked me how old I was, and I was like 24. He's like, you don't look 24, you don't sound 24.
Yeah.
You sound like you're 34.
Right. Anyway.
For those possibly just tuning in, George does know his shit.
Yeah.
Kind of, a little bit, sort of, not much.
He's got it. He's got it.
We keep him around for reasons.
Yeah. We can't take Jordan anywhere, but Cheese kind of keeps him reined in.
I'm not allowed to go anywhere. He can go everywhere.
I'm Jordan Chandler.
Yeah. There we go.
You're going to have to fight the other guy who already is, so...
Anyway, we've got just a couple minutes here left in the stream. Is there anything outside of like the big three? So we didn't even talk about Blackwell, but I don't necessarily know that we really need to...
about it other than what they've already talked about.
So right,
they showed roadmaps, but it was vague stuff that
we didn't even get exact specs for Blackwell. We just got the generic numbers. It's 2.5 times faster than
they as far as I haven't checked in last week because I've been busy at Computex, but they don't even have the white paper out yet.
No,
they have the technical brief, but no white paper.
Correct. So anyway, is there anything that we haven't covered that you guys think was super cool, super stupid? Like what is your best and worst of show? How's that?
Best of show, if you could please bring the visual. There is a liquid cool on the homepage, top left.
Oh, is it your the super micro?
Yeah. There's the Blackwell, among other things, in there. They showed up, and I was at the keynote.
Hey, look, Jensen's signing everything.
Yeah, they do that. It's fun the first time you see it, and it's like going to and after that.
Apparently, you put something in front of Jensen, he'll sign it.
I'm going to send you a video after this stream, and that joke is going to get infinitely funnier.
Is it the video that I think it is?
From Taipei 101.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Super Micro showed up to this thing with like a vendetta to prove, and it was kind of impressive. Jensen was at their keynote. I was there for it. It was kind of awkward but amazing at the same time. They're doing this total solution thing where if you they're advertising that you can just pick up the phone and call Supermicro, and they'll give you a whole data center. From the cooling tower to the GPU. You can do whatever. And when Jensen got on stage, he was making all kinds of jokes about, oh, I work for you, Charles. For those who don't know, Charles is the CEO of
Supermicro. Yep.
But he's like, oh, I work for you. I'm your sales guy now. Like, just really like kind of like super fun, but kind of like weird, like what's happening here.
Yeah.
But their thing that was really cool about it was an end-to-end solution where you could call up and order a Blackwell, or you could order a Grace Hopper. But they kept saying over and over, and I never got an exact straight answer out of it, was if you call you 2 weeks for a Grace Hopper rack, which you probably know as well as I do at this point. GPUs are kind of hard to get today.
Yeah.
And they came out swinging with this whole 2-week commitment. You can get it in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting thing.
Especially if you're an AI company that's trying to roll out, if you're going, we have a demand, we have a customer base, we have a product that we need to back with, 3 racks worth of Grace Hopper and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you call one of your typical OEMs, your Dell, your HP, your whoever, it can be 3 to 6 months.
It has been for a very long time.
It's
people were taking L40s for a long time because it was a GPU. Good Lord, I need a GPU. Please help me.
Right.
I'll take L40s to do AI on, which at the end of the day are just not really AI cards. They can do it, and they can do it really well, but it's an A6000 without NVLink or a display output.
Yeah.
It was.
I mean,
I'll
take some L40s because they support vGPU, and I'd love to.
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. Hold on, I have some right here for.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Let me just go grab my other pair of pants.
My other pair of pants.
Yeah, I happen to have several Blackwells and MI300s in there. Would you like some?
And that brings up an interesting thing too, because we saw the NVIDIA keynote. We all saw the Intel keynote. Intel, oh my God, Intel, $125,000 for their Gaudi solution, for an 8-way Gaudi solution for $125K.
Yeah.
And then poor AMD is sitting over there. Oh my God, who shit in my pants again?
Well, we have this $20,000 chip. Isn't that cool?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
But Intel doesn't have the software yet. They're there. They're getting there. And a good friend of mine is in charge of that team now over there. So I won't say anything too mean, but they're gonna get there.
Yeah.
They will. It's just a matter of time, right? So the software is going to be the defining factor, in my opinion. That's all I gained out of Computex. Software.
Yeah.
We could talk about this for another hour.
How much time you got? How
10
much more
hours.
coffee can you get?
I have done a second cup, and I am out. So my coffee is done.
Same.
Yeah.
I'm nearly done with this.
Anyway, that actually brings up a great point. I don't know that I want to spend another hour, but there's ebbs and flows when it comes to hardware versus software dichotomy, and for the longest time for gamers, because we were stuck with Intel 4-core CPUs, like, just to bring this back down to the consumer level, because we were stuck at 4 cores and 8 threads for so long, the software requirements never really started pushing the hardware because the average was 4-core 8 thread. And so, topped with, having a GTX 1060 in Pascal and whatnot, being like 2.5 times faster than Maxwell ever was, we never started pushing hardware. And so for the longest time, you could run an 8-year-old GPU.
1080 Ti gang.
1080 Ti. How good is the 1080 Ti today still? And it's because that whole, 8-year period where technology didn't advance, it didn't force anything to advance.
Why wouldn't it?
Right. But the last 2 years, we're starting to see a switch where the hardware is far outpacing software development. And there are games coming out now that are starting to struggle on Turing and even some lower-end Ampere cards, at 1080p. Helldivers runs at like 80 FPS on a 3060, but also has lows down into like the 20s and 15.
And what does a 3060 cost? That's so affordable.
Right, it is totally affordable. But
that's so cool.
But what did a 1060 cost, and how good was a 1060 for how many years after? And here we're seeing a 3060 where 2 years later it's being supplanted, and you're going, I don't know if I want to get more than 60 FPS if I can keep this card anymore. And but to bring this back to the enterprise, we're starting to see that on the enterprise level even more, because there was also a stagnation in hardware, and software kind of caught up on the hardware side. Now we've seen the hardware explode, where every generation we're twice as fast. Like every 12 to 18 months, we are twice or 2.5 times faster. That's the Blackwell from Ada, and the Ada from Ampere, and the Ampere from Turing.
Blackwell from Ada, though. That's Blackwell. You have to look at the instruction set that we're running. And I made a joke about it, and it was probably in bad taste, and I shouldn't say it publicly, but they did some changes with what they were marketing on the benchmarks to make the numbers look a little bit better.
And they probably did. But my underlying point is, the software still hasn't caught up with what the technology is capable of. And even with NVIDIA, even with CUDA, even as good as CUDA scales, it's still going to take a lot of rejiggering to take the most advantage out of Blackwell. And if you look at AMD and Intel, who are always trying to play catch up, they're also a decade behind in software still.
Well, where does that put us then in 5 years? Who do you see as potentially coming out on top? Because we've got NVIDIA, who's out here killing the open CUDA project. I can't remember the name, but you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And then you've got Intel with OpenVINO being like, it's all open source. And then AMD coming out, it's all open source. And here you go. Here's the open source, and we can all get better together. But NVIDIA is staying in their walled garden, which is fine. That's okay. Who do you see where we're at in 5 years? Are we going to go the way of SteamOS and Valve, and all of a sudden Linux starts taking off and it's good? Or are we going to keep on with the closed source rock gods of titty signing, leather jacket wearing?
I think NVIDIA is playing this perfectly. They're playing this perfectly to stay in front. And what I mean by that is they're not going full Broadcom. Never go full Broadcom. you
Never
you
go full
have you have a cash cow, and if we break this down into like its simplest form, NVIDIA, you are a hardware company. You sell hardware. Okay. If you also, within your closed ecosystem, try to start selling software and solutions and everything else to go along with your hardware to support your hardware, that is a means to an end. It will make you money today, but open source will catch you. What I think NVIDIA is doing right is they are continuing to just sell hardware. And CUDA may be closed, and you need an NVIDIA card to run CUDA, but CUDA itself is not a licensed implementation. As soon as NVIDIA makes a switch and goes, we're going to go closed wall, but then we're going to start blocking off features. If they went full Broadcom, they will fail.
Yeah.
They're all, to some degree, they have already kind of started doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Not entirely. Like,
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of overlap between consumer and data center in terms of what you can run.
Right.
But you can start to see, if I remember correctly, it was Hopper runs a different SM level, essentially. They're not completely compatible with IDA GPUs in terms of the data types and the software. If you compile for Hopper, you can't quite run on IDA, if I remember.
But that's just your 17 versus 16 versions of CUDA. And there's always new implementations and new instruction sets
Absolutely.
and new pathways.
But that's a new thing for NVIDIA.
Yeah.
I wonder if that disparity will continue.
I don't think that's going to be a huge thing, because
It may not, but it is in my head noteworthy that did happen, at least for one generation. Whether that continues is TBD.
Yeah. Don't go full Broadcom.
Don't go full Broadcom. That's the message.
Never go full Broadcom.
I will say Intel and AMD are also playing this the exact right way, supporting open standards. And
I love that.
Yeah.
Right.
I love every second of it. I'm here for it.
Right. As an open source guy through and through, that is absolutely the right move. And the problem is everyone is playing this right. And so the hardware is going to win. And NVIDIA has the hardware advantage.
I think the real losers, and as much as I like some of these companies, are going to be the, quote, dedicated AI accelerator companies. I think they'll eventually be the ultimate losers. Mm-hmm. Granted, I like some of these companies, but in my opinion, unless you can... Cerberus is not just useful in AI workloads. They have proven themselves in HPC workloads.
Yeah.
If you're AI only, in terms of your accelerator, I think you're going to end up losing out.
I fully agree with that, especially if you as an AI accelerator company and as an ASIC maker essentially are not supporting open standards. And a lot of those AI companies are not supporting it's their own software stack because it's their own specific instruction set that they're building for.
Yeah. And a large issue is building from open source from the get-go is actually really hard.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem.
Yeah. Open source is such a weird thing too, because it's, I'm a writer, right? Like, my work gets put out to the world for everybody to see, judge, think, feel, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's difficult. Like, to do it in software, he's stupid because he did it like that.
Right.
It's a next level thing. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who's going to win in 5 years? Man, if I had the answer to that.
Come on, Jeff. Try to retire.
But my one thought is the problem is everyone is doing it correctly right now. Everyone is at the top of their game right now. And who's going to win in 5 years? The one that continues being at the top of their game and the one that doesn't stumble. Isn't Jim Keller making a dedicated AI hardware with open source software? Absolutely. He's all in on RISC-V right now. Back the day before we did the live show back in December in San Jose, Cheese and I got to meet Jim Keller, and Cheese actually had to sneak off to something else. I got to sit there and shoot the crap with Jim Keller for an hour and a half. Holy crap.
Yeah, I snuck off with this guy.
Yeah, holy crap.
In order.
You made the wrong decision, Cheese.
Hey, Oxide was pretty cool. I have to admit, Oxide.
Will I rather hang out with Jordan, or do I want to shoot the crap with Jim Keller in a casual,
No, I took him somewhere cool. There was fun stuff.
Also, I got to hear into the, hey, I would like 2 petabytes of storage, please.
Oh, we can marginally adjacently talk about 2 petabytes of storage.
Anyway, yeah.
No, world record holder.
That was cool too.
Yeah.
But
Double Pi Day. Watch out for it.
Yeah, who's going to win?
Nothing this time.
Who's going to win? That's a great question. If NVIDIA is smart, and I think NVIDIA is smart, CUDA stays relatively open, and what I mean by that is if you have an NVIDIA GPU, it runs CUDA, and you can do whatever you want with it, and we're seeing that. Yes, there's always going to be some compilation changes or things like that. There's always architectural changes. There's always optimizations from one hardware generation to the next, but you can still run your CUDA 2.0 workloads on CUDA 17, and as long as they stick with that, and as long as they maintain a hardware lead, they're going to be in the lead.
There is now the added specter for NVIDIA, Microsoft, and OpenAI of apparently the DOJ and FTC is now looking into them for antitrust issues.
Totally.
That announcement came out earlier today.
No, I know. There's been a lawsuit filed by the DOJ. Or
so
a letter of inquiry filed.
There is anybody's guess.
Yeah.
I
don't know if anything comes of that.
Who knows?
If I'm being honest.
Here's the thing, right? To me,
unless there's collusion to lock out competition, in which case the finger would point at Microsoft because Microsoft has no competitors in the space, but OpenAI and NVIDIA certainly do. And
the fact that the FTC and DOJ are even opening a case against these three makes me think that they have something. What it is, I don't know. But traditionally, U.S. regulators are
more money than everybody else.
This is true. They have more money than sense. You're not wrong.
The pragmatist in me, though, goes, Microsoft has built a monopoly, fair or otherwise, whatever your opinions are, but they still own 96% of the desktop market, and 45% of the enterprise space.
The libertarian
why now?
Goes, who the hell cares if it's a good product? Let them have it.
Well, here,
but
why
Microsoft
now?
choosing the best in the space to integrate into their system is not monopolistic. It's contracting the best person in the system. So unless there's active collusion to keep others out of that marketplace, which again, Microsoft choosing the product leader to implement into their OS, that's not to me monopolistic.
The only thing I could maybe think of, at least on the NVIDIA side, is maybe something with regards to CUDA, or maybe trying to price folks out. But otherwise, for Microsoft, why go at them now? Like, they've had... right now, I would argue Microsoft is weakest in terms of their market share, for the reasons already pointed out.
Well, I think
not on the consumer side.
There's a lot of misinformation, and there's
Copilot's aimed at consumer side.
Yeah. There's just a lot of concern and misinformation about it.
Like I said, I think we do need to wait. Like, I don't know what comes of it. I think it is noteworthy, but I don't know. Yeah.
Wait, are we talking politics now? Talking politics on this?
And with that, that's going to do it for... Anyway, I think it is about time to wrap up. So, anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. I know it's well after midnight where you guys are at now. I do have to start my day. I've got other things that I need to go take care of. So
you're not sleeping, are you?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. No, it's 9:35 in the morning here, so I think it's about time to start my day. Anyway, that was a lot of fun. A lot of good information. If you guys are interested in following Chips&Cheese, also known as Jordo, also known as Jordan, over at StorageReview, links to all of their stuff, web pages, blogs, social media, it's all down in the video description. You have been warned.
Yes, I did copy you.
Oh, was I not supposed to post personal Instagrams? Oh, damn. Sorry.
What's an Instagram? I don't know what that is.
You freaking Zoomer.
From Taipei 101 last night. Sending that right now.
Yeah, hold on.
Anyway, thanks so much for watching. This has been a very interesting time slot to fill, but fantastic conversations all around. Anyway, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Craft Computing if you haven't done so already. Go follow StorageReview and Chips&Cheese. Their websites are also down in the video description. If you want to get in on it, we still have about 100, actually about 90 units of my SNMP Wi-Fi temperature sensor left available. Craftcomputing.com is where to get those. If you want to help support the channel, support the podcast, head on over to craftcomputing.store. We've got coffee tumblers and coasters and all kinds of fun merch that is all designed and made right here in-house by me. And that's honestly the best way you could possibly support the channel. Guys, anything good of the order before we close?
Thanks so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the ramblings of barely lucid guys who have been at Computex for a week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird being the sober one.
We're 12 hours inverted on the schedule at least, or somewhere around
15 hours.
So I'm going to catch some sleep and go get on a flight. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you guys again so much. And as always, we'll see you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific time for the latest in beer and tech news. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah.
Cheers.